There are several reasons why it's a really good idea to open your garden to the public. It's great for the community, it gets people together, and also people just love seeing other people's gardens. Secondly, it's an incredibly good way to raise money for charity. Open Gardens events raise a fantastic amount of money for charity every year, and particularly if you've got a local project that you want to fund, you don't need to have lots of absolutely brilliant gardens because people just love seeing what other people have done in their garden. It has a hugely feel-good factor in the community, and in terms of you actually opening your garden, will it do any damage? Well, we open 29, 30 gardens every year for the Faversham Open Gardens, and I really haven't heard any reports of any damage. Certainly we had hundreds of people to our garden, and when we closed the door on them, it was as if no one had ever been here. It was extraordinary. There wasn't even one little bit of litter dropped. Well, if you're planning to open your garden, you don't actually need to have 29 or 30 gardens. You can start with 3 or 4. But I thought it might be helpful if I told you how we do it in Faversham Open Gardens, and you can adapt that down, or if necessary up, to suit your own town or village. Firstly, get together a group of you. If you've only got 3 or 4 gardens, it could perhaps be organised just by 1 or 2 people, but it's great to have people to bounce ideas off. And also everyone has different skills, and there's quite a few different little tasks that you have to carry out, even if you've only got 3 or 4 gardens. Secondly, decide whether you will have criteria or not. We don't think it's appropriate to have criteria in a community event. If someone loves their garden and is generous enough to share it with others, we know people are going to find it really interesting. And what people love above all is variety. To go to 3 gardens that are very close together, for example, and grow in the same soil and have the same climate, and then to see how different they are, is in itself fantastically valuable to gardeners. And of course there'll be one that you personally like better than another, and it might not be the same as the one I personally like better. But I think in terms of a community open gardens, if people are happy to volunteer, we would always say yes. You could join if you live in Britain, you could open your garden through the National Garden Scheme, and it's a wonderful organisation which raises money for cancer charities and many charities every year. And this particular garden scheme, the National Garden Scheme, does have a very particular set of criteria. You are expected to be a good gardener, and people come from a long way away to see quite a special garden. But if you decide to go it alone with maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6 gardens just to raise money for a local charity, these are the things you need to think about. How much are you going to charge? How are you going to have a ticket? Are you going to sell them centrally? How will you publicise it? We always print several thousand flyers and a couple of banners, and although printing's not expensive, those costs do add up, so they need to be calculated in when you're deciding what the price is. Because we have 29 gardens, we have, and a lovely garden market, we actually have a whole booklet, and it's designed for us and it's printed, and that's paid for by advertising. But obviously if you're going to do that, you need someone who'll sell the advertising. And of course it's hugely helpful if you can have all this designed by somebody. Faversham Open Gardens is really lucky to have a professional designer on the committee, but it's worth finding someone locally who perhaps might give their help. In terms of publicity, we enter Faversham Open Gardens for local listings, and we also go on to the national listings for open gardens. I write about it on the Middlesized Garden blog, and I think a few other blogs write about it. We all put it on social media, we put it on What's On, and we've been very well supported by BBC Radio Kent's gardening programme. They've often given us a lovely slot. So you need to get in touch with all the local tourism, guidebooks, radio stations, newspapers, blogs, and anything else that's out there. And that takes time, and also it sort of helps if someone's got a bit of publicity experience. So if you can get someone on the committee who knows a bit about that, that would be great. Then you have an issue of access and insurance. Now, most open gardens are accessed through a gate in the garden, or a garage, or a side gate, or back gate, or something like that. It's very difficult for insurance purposes, and very possibly for you, if people have to walk through your house to see your garden. So that is one thing to think about. Secondly, if you're doing it for a charity, and the charity has event insurance, you should be covered under that. But most household insurance won't cover you for opening your garden. open your garden is not a dangerous activity, but obviously accidents can happen. None have ever happened to us in open gardens, but they obviously can happen, and you have to take care. Before you open your garden, go round with a friend and just look to see, are there any hazards, loose paving stones, things you could trip over, any tools that are out. Obviously if water is there, then children can't be unsupervised, and it's all the common sense things, but you do have to think about it. The day before you open your garden, the organisers need to go round to the garden openers and give them some way of a notice for their garden gate, balloons, something like that, and also last minute instructions and see if they're okay. Obviously you have to have a fallback if someone has a disaster. You need a sign that will say, due to unforeseen circumstances, this garden will not be open today. People can also raise more money by having cakes and teas in their gardens, and if it's a country village and there's nowhere to eat or drink nearby, this is a really good idea. It may have some insurance implications, and not everybody has a garden big enough to do it, but it's certainly worth thinking about. In the end, opening your garden is a wonderful community event, and neighbours get to see each other. People come to see your town or village, and they see it at its best, with people being welcoming in their own private spaces. And I would warmly recommend it as a very, very nice thing to do, to raise money either for a national charity or for a local cause. If you've enjoyed this and found it helpful, do hit like, because that gives me an idea that you'd like to hear more about things you can do in your garden. And if you haven't subscribed to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel, we upload on Saturdays with garden tips, ideas and inspiration, interviews with experts and garden tours of the Middlesized Garden. So I hope to see you again. Do join us. Thank you. Goodbye.